Hello, and thank you all for joining us today for the first capacity building story from the PCCB network. My name is Simone Albus, and I'm an officer in the UN Climate Change Capacity Building team. I'm very pleased today to be joined by two forward-thinking leaders who will tell us a bit about a very fascinating and exciting awareness-raising and capacity-building effort that they are working on together. Thank you both very much for accepting our invitation to tell us more about your recent collaboration, Voices from the Frontline. To give our viewers a little bit more background on this, Voices from the Frontline is a joint initiative by ICCCAD and CDKN to support communities across the globe in sharing their stories on the challenges of and the responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. And in doing so, the project does not only look at the health impacts, but also at the socio-economic impacts. And today we hope to find out more about this initiative, the thinking behind it, the stories that have been told, and the impact that the project is hoping to make. And that already brings us to my questions. Can you tell us a little bit more about the project and how the idea for this collaboration has started?
So from ICCCAD's perspective, we have been working on and with the most vulnerable communities in the most vulnerable countries to the impacts of climate change for some years now. And then when the COVID-19 crisis emerged and the pandemic started, and particularly the lockdowns associated with the pandemic, the same communities, particularly the more urban communities, got affected.
As the COVID pandemic unfolded and intensified globally, us as CDKN started looking at ways to share stories of how grassroots communities in different developing countries were responding to this crisis. At the same time, our partners ICCCAD, Saleem and his colleagues, as well as the Global Resilience Partnership, were exploring ways of setting up a learning community to capture innovative ways that these grassroots organizations are responding to COVID, and to draw out lessons for how we might support community-led adaptation, build resilience, and also respond to the climate challenge that is there all the time.
My center is a center on climate change, not a public health center, but it is very, very relevant to what is happening in the COVID context to the work that we do. And so that's why we have been engaging in it. And we're very happy to be partnering with CDKN in this.
Thanks, Saleem. Thanks, Shehnaaz. This is a really exciting collaboration. My next question would actually also go to both of you. How does this project highlight useful lessons about community resilience through the stories that you are sharing?
So when I'm responding now, it's responding to the way we see resilience. So the definition of resilience for us is about the capacity of a system to cope with certain hazards, either an event or a trend, and to maintain their functioning, and also to learn from that and then be prepared better for the future. So I'm just framing it that is the definition of resilience that I'll be talking to. So if you're looking at COVID, and like Saleem said, we're not a health organization, we're also a climate organization. But our thinking is that the way communities are responding to COVID will be similar to how they respond to if there's a climate disaster or the unfolding climate crisis. And then added to that, there's economic stresses of insecure livelihoods and poverties. What the stories are showing is diverse examples of how communities are taking action to respond to the COVID crisis. Sometimes they're innovating, sometimes they're drawing on their own reserves of indigenous knowledge, social networks, and coping strategies that they have tweaked when they responded to previous crises. So the gift of this project for us is, and we're hoping to share this, is that it is providing a way to identify existing coping strategies that the communities had in place, and it has now been made stronger and more resilient in the face of COVID-19. It's also allowed us to capture innovations, self-help strategies that communities have devised in responding to COVID-19, and these can then later on be applied to tackling the climate change crisis.
Yeah, this all sounds really, really true, and sounds like the work you're doing is really relevant and really timely. And I agree with you that what is really needed, I think, is a systemic resilience approach dealing with COVID-19 and future shocks and crises at the same time. And I have to say, as a reader of these stories, one is really getting to know the issues that the communities that you're reporting from are facing, and their impressive resilience efforts. And having just read the latest story from Nepal about these youth-led efforts to build local capacities in the face of this crisis to enhance their own food security through permaculture training, I found it a really, really inspiring read, and very important action that is really happening there on the ground. Building on the question that you both just answered, who do you think can benefit the most from these stories and the project, and how do you think this project actually contributes to building the climate-related capacity of your readers? Saleem, if you would like to start.
Sure. So there are three things that we are hoping to achieve. Firstly, to highlight their stories. As I said, they are doing things, and the stories are not of them as victims. The stories are them vulnerable communities taking actions on their own with whatever they have, and being successful, maybe in a small way, but certainly being successful. The second story we want is to shift the paradigm of victimhood and helplessness to agency. These people have agency, they have capacities, they have abilities, and as I said, they have enormous social capital, which we often neglect in our looking at them. The final element of this is enabling them to build their leadership. So what we are looking for ultimately is resilient communities based on local leadership that comes out from the communities themselves.
We reach tens of thousands of readers every month through our website, social media channels, and our online events. And particularly now, we're doing lots of online events. For us, we see it as a vital part of our mission to amplify the lived experiences, concerns, and needs of those most affected by climate. And we do this through our communications and engagement with these audiences. And then coming to our role as knowledge brokers and how we'll take these messages further, for us, we will be referencing the voices from the Frontline stories extensively, like quite extensively, as we engage in the international policy processes and dialogues in the run-up to COP26, which is hopefully happening in Glasgow next year. And then also what will be happening is that ICCCAD, Saleem's team, will develop a series of advocacy messages, and this will be continue as the stories emerge, the stories from the Frontline emerge, because it's a series, it's an ongoing series. These lessons will come out, the messages will come out, and we're looking at disseminating these at high-level events. For example, the Climate Adaptation Summit in January. So these will all hopefully contribute to strengthening the collective understanding of realities on the ground, both positive and negative, and how to keep enhancing resilience.
One other question I would like to ask both of you is that what would be the one lesson learned from this project that you would like to share with other actors that are involved in capacity building for climate action and resilience at different levels? And maybe I give the floor to Shehnaaz.
So I think what has really been very stark, particularly for us as CDKN, where we've always worked with governments and policy makers, is that we can learn from and we can partner and work collaboratively with communities. We've often done so much top-down planning and implementation, but now we need to truly embrace and support the bottom-up actions, working and learning together. We've seen now how low-income communities in the developing countries, from these stories that Saleem gave some examples, they're achieving so much with such little resources. And what this project has highlighted is that there's need for external support, but it needs to be designed in a a truly collaborative way to complement people's self-help efforts. So it's not this thing where we're seeing them as a victim, and I think this is what's coming through more than once in our conversation here. One urgent or pressing need that is demanding is to help people access information and communication technology so they can receive critical information about shocks that's heading their way. Um, and this we've seen coming out as a need articulated across the stories. So the project has highlighted the importance of knowledge brokers in the space where you can help counter misinformation. I mean, this counts for climate change just as well as for COVID, and to translate important scientifically based information into ways that is understandable by everybody and so that they can act on them. So what I've given you is a lesson and a gap, and yourself, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing this lesson and the gap. Very, very interesting and relevant. Saleem, would you like to share your lesson as well with us?
Sure. So I'll share a lesson that I am learning as we speak here, which is that, and I'll give you a bit of background and then come to the lesson. So the background is that I've been working on this issue of locally led and community-based adaptation for many, many years in least developed countries, in particular in Asia and Africa. And it involves, in the past, it would involve a lot of face-to-face meetings, workshops, people coming together, flying all over the place, which is not very good for my carbon footprint, but I used to fly a lot. But now in this new world of COVID, so I'm sitting in my house, not moving, but I'm linked all over the world. And this is true not just for people sitting in offices with computers and laptops, but it's also true for many of the people that we are talking to on the front line.
Thank you both very much for sharing these lessons learned. I think some of the things I've heard from both of you is the really greater need for support to bottom up and grassroots level action and community level action. I'm hearing about the need for access to information. And then I think Saleem has also shared the experience of how well connected we can all be during the crisis, not being able to travel, but nevertheless being really able to work together and collaborate. Thanks a lot for sharing this. That actually brings me already to my last very quick question to both of you. If you could describe your experience with this initiative in one word, what would that be? And I'll leave it to you to decide who responds first.
Can I go, Saleem? Because I got one
go
word.
First.
It's
I need to think.
Inspiring is my word, but just to give you some context, I'm a mother of 4 teenagers now. So for me, just these stories that were coming out, and particularly about how women are responding to this and the youth, it's just inspired me completely.
So I'm actually similar. The word I'll choose is excited, and not only for the content of the stories that we are getting, but also at another level. This is being run entirely by my younger colleagues in my center. I am just giving overall guidance, and they're working extremely well with colleagues in CDKN. And to me, that collaboration, I think, is another very, very positive outcome of, in fact, capacity building.
Thanks, that's excellent. I think that is the perfect note on which to conclude this interview. With this, I would like to thank our two guests today very much. We wish you lots of success with this initiative going forward. And I would also like to thank our viewers and invite you all to stay tuned and follow also our future capacity building stories from the PCCB network. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you both so much.